Hi, everybody. It's Brian Mahoney, the CEO of Trend Research and the president of the 50,000 plus member OTT executive community. We're continuing in our podcast series with leaders in the industry. Today, we're joined by Stephen Lathroum. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you so much, Brian. Always a pleasure to see you.
This is great. Well, first of all, I need to thank Stephen because Robosoft Technologies is a sponsor. They've worked with me last year on custom research, on surveys, on webinars, and on really things that benefit the entire community. So kudos to you, Stephen, and Robosoft Technologies. Thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. We're thrilled to work with you. So thank you.
Very cool. And some people met Stephen and his team in Denver at the Stream TV show. We hosted and Robosoft sponsored our open bar meetup and some wonderful Mexican cuisine. That was fun. We had about 60 people there. Quick updates for the community. We'll be doing something similar at IBC in Amsterdam in September. So look out for that. Also, we're planning to be at NAB New York. That's in October. And then we have our own OTT Executive Summit this year, moving to Tampa, down in Tampa, Florida in December. So that's kind of like the lineup if you want to get involved or join us. We're still looking for speakers for the OTT Executive Summit. And in 2 weeks, actually, I'm moderating 2 panels at the Stream TV Ad Summit. So I've got executives from Paramount and let's see, Dish and Sling and some other folks and Warner Brothers too. So tune in that 2 weeks. You can sign up on the Stream TV website. And once again, I'll be sharing whatever insights I have moderating those 2 panels. So that's a quick update on what we're doing. Our focus for these podcasts is to really personalize, learn from, and learn a little bit about some of the leaders in the industry. So, Stephen, what do you do at Robosoft Technologies? Like, what's your role and what does Robosoft do?
Sure. So I am the president of the U.S. operations for Robosoft Technology. Been here for roughly about 18 months, but have spent the last dozen or so years in digital strategy and IT services and whatnot. So, fundamentally, when I think about what Robosoft does and what we offer to our clients is really, we're a digital experience company. Yeah. And I think, where we show up the best is helping our clients to leverage digital technology in order to build, deeper, more meaningful interactions with their own customers. So almost everything we do is around custom technology, custom software development, and again, bridging that gap, I think, for those customers. So it's all direct to consumer in terms of the work that we do with our clients.
Very cool. And so we've been working together now for the better part of a year and a half, and it's been a great collaboration. And I'm grateful for that. It's funny because when we first met, I'm like, Robosoft you guys do robots, and it's like, so that's the first thing.
Branding is a little tricky. Yeah,
it's fine. It's, you work with it. But one of the reasons I was excited working with Robosoft is you have some marquee customers, and I didn't know about it. I didn't know that you guys did the design engineering for the launch of Discovery Plus, for instance. I mean, that's a great feather in your cap. Maybe just take us through a couple of your marquee customers and maybe what you've done for them. That'd be helpful.
Yeah, it's funny. When you mention that, sort of the not knowing and sort of the brand, I have to admit, and perhaps this is a little hubristic, but I think about the old, Intel Inside commercials, right? You remember when, Intel was trying to create a brand name for itself, and it was really kind of behind the scenes. And I think there's an element of that here. I mean, as you say, probably, we're a 25-year-old company, and probably for the last 5 years or so, we have been working with some of the biggest brands in the world on building, OTT applications and streaming platforms for them. So, I mean, you mentioned Discovery.
Yep.
We've been working with Discovery for probably 4.5 years now, have a very large team of people interacting with them. And honestly, it started in Asia. I mean, as you know, almost every big US-based content brand is looking to expand globally in a very aggressive way. I mean, there's been a saturation here in the US. The consumer markets overseas are quite dramatic. They dwarf the US population by orders of magnitude. And we got involved with Discovery as they were looking at Southeast Asia as a launch point. And so started doing a lot of work with them, D+ launch, global cycling network we did. And then through some of that initial work, we got pulled into their larger assets. So, they were a little bit late to the party. leading up into COVID with getting, D Plus launched. We were extremely instrumental in that effort. We were pulled into Food Network Kitchen, to Magnolia. I mean, really, we have been an instrumental partner behind the scenes in design and development of most of their OTT and streaming brands. So
yeah, it's very cool. And I've been reaching out to members of the community, doing some research sponsored by Robosoft. Thank you, around this concept of sort of like a three-tiered concept around sort of engineering partnership, the lowest level being IT outsourcing, right? Engineering outsourcing. There's hundreds of IT shops that can, help you there. And you guys definitely do that. But the next two levels is more strategic. So the next is sort of staff augmentation, right? Where you become a partner, you fill in gaps and sort of the resources. Very important this year where we're seeing a lot of downsizing. So having that flexibility to kind of augment the team you already have. But really, I think the sweet spot for Robosoft and companies like yourselves is what I would really call sort of innovation centers of excellence, right? Where you have the skill sets and the experience in the OTT and streaming space. So not, just sort of generic. And folks in the industry know how complex that is when you're looking at multiple devices, connected TVs and Roku and, all the UX and integration there to provide a really seamless and engaging user experience. That's hard work. And that's sort of where I see you positioned. Maybe talk a little bit about that. Like, what's your partnership model with your clients?
Yeah. So, I'm glad that you brought up sort of, cross-device and cross-platform. I mean, I think anybody that's going to be working in streaming media or with media companies that are looking to build platforms have to be thinking, as broad-based as possible in terms of where that consumer is going to consume that brand, right? Whether it's over the web or mobile or CTV, the old, 1 foot versus 10 foot. Kind of approximation of that. And then, all the various touch points, right? Whether it's, Apple TV or Fire TV from Amazon or Roku and other permutations, right? The applications that live within, the cable providers, for example. So, I think it was really important for us as an organization to say, hey, look, if we want to really be a partner to our clients here, we have to be able to provide them with the capability to build across all of these outlets, leveraging the same sort of product strategy, leveraging the same UI, UX, the design assets, and really be able to put, our customers, our clients in front of their customers, wherever it is they want to consume. So we've invested quite a bit of time and resource in building out teams that are capable of doing that. And then, of course, when it comes to commercial technologies, the OVP players, the subscription management players, it was really important for us to build, capability there and develop those relationships because, not everybody is a Discovery. I mean, Discovery, has, they're a $50 billion company. They've built out, all of their own back-end capabilities for delivering, video. By the way, talking about centers of excellence, and we have actually built a custom training program for our team that are allocated to Discovery just to learn, that back end platform so that we could be most efficient in the front end work. And to your point, the integrations that we're doing there, very complex work.
Yes.
So this isn't, just, we're going to offshore capabilities. This is really about us taking a vested interest on a global basis in developing the skill sets that are going to best serve this market. That was a very important thing for us to do. And I think when we show up with our clients, that's what we want to be able to do for them. We want to be able to be that partner who can really flex across any way that they want to be able to distribute and interact with their viewers.
Yeah, and it's only gotten more complex. I mean, folks that know me know that one of my services is working on RFPs for new streaming services and doing the vendor selection. And it's, it used to be fairly easy to get, integration on Roku's platform, for instance, or, iOS has always been difficult. I know that was one of your first partners, first customers. How do you manage that? Like, and it's constantly changing the skill sets, the sort of gatekeepers to be able to be part of and integrated and even getting their attention. I know a lot of folks and a lot of other folks that I work with, that's sort of the biggest challenge, right? Is getting integration across all those platforms. Any best practices you can share for our audience?
Well, I mean, look, I alluded earlier to the fact that, we've been around for 25 years. And I think, and you kind of talked
So
a little
build a
bit.
time machine, go back in time, start working with Apple a long time ago. Well,
I think, look, if you want to be successful in this space, you've got to invest the time and energy to build the relationships with, those end user partners, or those consumer technologies or B2B technologies that are out there. You mentioned Apple. We did start. I mean, it's not apocryphal. It's actually a real story. I mean, the company was really founded working with Apple. We're building educational applications on the Mac OS way back in the day, and I think because of that, we've been sort of a preferred partner and have access to technology early, and I think that does kind of imbue the way that we think about tech, and I think particularly as it applies to OTT, right? I mean, there are a lot of players out in the space. I think it behooves us as a partner to our clients to understand those technologies very well, and then how it is that we're going to integrate into them. I think at least in my experience, and I'm not on the technology side, but I will say that all of the third-party commercial technologies are obviously self-interested in being able to get their platforms utilized by the big content players out there, and so I think we've found, generally speaking, that they're willing participants in helping us to shore up our own skill set, because we, oftentimes, we'll sit between them and a client in terms of building out these platforms. So it's very synergistic, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you have to have the relationships. It takes time. It takes effort. You got to constantly maintain those relationships, both from a kind of personal perspective, but also the tech stacks have gotten more and more complex. So one thing you did mention I find very interesting is Magnolia as a customer. And I think that folks that kind of, look at that app, and I know at one point it was app of the day on the Apple Store, App Store, which is pretty cool. That's one of the areas that I've been doing some research on, is around communities. And we spent a lot of time in this industry just trying to get playback to work properly, right? For, VOD libraries, as well as live streaming. And that's hard, right? And I think we've largely solved that problem, although people would beg to differ when if you look at the NBA finals and some of the hiccups we had there. But assume that problem's there. Retention is a huge issue right now in the industry. We got to keep our viewers and our subscribers engaged. And from my perspective, community is one way to do that. So if you look at Magnolia, you got Chip and Joanna, you got this great content. My wife is addicted to everything Chip and Joanna. We get the magazine. She wants to go to Waco, Texas, like it's Disney World. I don't know if I'm going to go on that trip, but and then you've got print, you got digital, and you got merchandising. This is a way, I think, to pull in the viewer and the subscriber, get them more fully engaged, less of this binge and hopping around, and, other sources of monetization. So, do you agree with that? Is that a trend that you see happening? And can you share any sort of, again, best practices for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I would say, first of all, I appreciate you bringing up Magnolia. I think it was a really unique and I think wonderful experience for us to be able to partner with them on this project. And look, I think the ask was very interesting, and I'm actually surprised I'm not hearing it more from other clients, which is to say, hey, look, we're interacting with our customers on a lot of different platforms, but I have a single brand, but what I don't have is a single brand experience, even though the core of what that experience might be is consumption of streaming media, right? So in their case, to your point, they had an e-commerce platform. They've got the design studio. They've got the travel. I mean, so they had
merchandising, right?
Right. And to your point, those are all ways to monetize and generate revenue. And so the task for us was, how do we create a streaming media experience that pulls a lot of those elements together? And I think, in a way, because of the fact that we are a digital experience company that has worked across e-commerce and across financial services, for like payment gateways and other, methodologies for getting people to interact, financially over platforms. And and healthcare, we can sort of bring a lens into this that allows us, I think, to create a more holistic experience for how people engage with their customers beyond just, well, I'm sitting on a couch and I'm sort of passively interacting with it. And I do think that that's where, a lot of this will have to evolve to. You kind of alluded to it in the top part of that question. And it's funny because I actually came out of the print media world, was the original part of my experience.
Print's not dead, right? If you integrate it into something larger, right?
Print isn't dead. And I think that there's a lot of lessons, frankly, that can be learned. And I was on the subscriber acquisition side. And I think the reality is, and the entire streaming media industry is really learning this today, which is that subscribers really don't pay for the cost of content, right? I mean, they just won't. I mean, so you have to figure out other ways to keep them engaged and to get them to, open wallets, certainly, but also, I mean, I think if you provide them with the right kind of experience, you're also going to get them to reconsider the value proposition of engaging with that brand and engaging with that content. And so, obviously the whole industry is running towards as fast as they can.
And that was my next question. Thank you. Yep.
Well, look, I think, again, getting back to sort of the print or even the cable, iterations of the media world over the last, 75 years, 80-90% of revenues in those business models come out of advertising, right? So, I mean, it makes sense, right, that they're looking for, a tiered pricing model in which some of those tiers are going to be supported by advertising. But I still think that, at the subscription level, if you can build in other ways to engage that audience, I mean, one, obviously, if you get more engagement and you've got a fast model in place, you're going to get more eyeballs, you're going to generate more advertising revenue. Mm-hmm. But I also think that too, if you can, leverage the other capabilities of digital, that you're going to be able to engage those customers along, other areas, right? So whether it be commerce or whether it be interacting with a community, for example. And I think that is one of the unique aspects of Magnolia, is that it truly is a community that's supported by a streaming platform, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and thank you for that. Thank you for your support on this. And we've already done half a dozen calls with other clients and streamers in the industry. And please, I'm reaching out to others if you've got the time. Audience, I'm looking for a lot of feedback and want to kind of build out this content. I think it's very important for the industry to find new ways to monetize their content, to improve engagement, to reduce churn that's killing us. And we're getting smarter about what content is selling and personalization, all that fun stuff. Meanwhile, you got to bake that into a really, I guess, what would you call it? Human-centric user experience. And I know that's, design thinking. There's a lot of, intelligence around that, and you have some expertise. Can you just talk about that philosophy a little bit about building a human-centric design, a user experience?
Yeah, I mean, so, design thinking as a philosophy is not new, I mean, in that sense. But I will say that, as a digital product company, whether it be design thinking or human-centered design is sort of another way of thinking about it, is pretty core to the way that we think, right? I think technology for its own sake doesn't actually solve, a lot of problems. And, sort of getting back to that idea of, sort of starting out working with Apple. I mean, I think it did sort of inculcate into our organization the way we think about design and the way we think about digital product design, which is, can you simplify it to the point where, the technology itself is almost not even readily apparent to the consumer, right? So understanding what the desires are, what the emotional drivers are of consumers of digital technology, is the way to sort of tap into that part of the decision-making side of the brain. I mean, it's very well documented, through study after study after study, that decision-making for human beings really occurs in the emotional centers of the brain. And if you can design product, with that in mind, how do people actually use it? What's actually important to them in terms of their interactions with this brand or with
the user journey, all that stuff, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you come at it strictly from a technology point of view, I mean, and look, we've all especially in the B2B space, we interact with technology that, so clearly was designed by an engineer, right? I mean, we all had that experience, right? Well, why is that here? That makes absolutely no sense. We do spend a significant amount of time with our clients, with end users, truly trying to understand, what's the optimal way for you to engage with this. And then look, you test and learn after that, right? But I think, as a starting point, it's truly about understanding how humans are going to engage with this. And look, I think if you look across the universe right now of streaming platforms, it's shocking to me the variability in some relatively simple interfaces or interactions, consumer experiences that some of them
They
just
fall
get
flat.
wrong.
Yeah. And I think they're looking too transactionally, right? Like, okay, pair the user, their profile up with some, content and play it, right? And it's much more than that. I know your tagline is emotion engineering and design. Since I've come to work with you as a client, I really get that. Now, I'll never be one of those people, sleeping outside for the latest iPhone, at the mall. That won't be me, but I totally get that you need to engage
Yeah.
the consumer of these services in a more emotional level. So kudos to you for that. It's pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate that. And look, I think that we're all suffering a little bit in the media space with the embarrassment of choice, right? Or not the embarrassment of riches, but the tyranny of choice, right?
The tyranny of choice, yeah.
Tyranny of choice. And look, I do think a lot of the content companies lead with content. I mean, meaning, they think that is the thing that will keep people hooked. And I think it does to a certain degree, but honestly, if the experience is a bad one, it just leaves a taste in your mouth. And I won't, mention names out there, but there are some platforms in which, people will cycle in and out. And again, this is a subscription business.
Yeah.
I think, the whole notion of binging really upended what, HBO originally started with in terms of event-driven TV, right? That, you're going to stay on the platform and continue to pay a subscription, fee over many, many months because that's what it's going to take, or years as you consume The Sopranos or Sex and the City and these kinds of things. But, all binging does is really increase churn, right? So it means you've got to continue to feed that beast with more and more content. And the reality is that for a lot of people, that's not the best experience ever, right?
Right.
I don't know about you, but I don't have, 8 hours a day to just sort of, binge television. So
no, I don't. And I think we're seeing this trend now where the walled garden is starting to break down, and we're starting to see, content becoming less exclusive. We can get access to multiple, streaming services. All the more reason you have to have the right engaging, user experience to keep them coming back to your service, right?
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think, gun to most people's head, they probably don't even know, which platform their favorite shows are on oftentimes, right? Or, the favorite show is almost an anachronism because, you're swapping it out for a new favorite show, perhaps on a different platform, a month from now. So, I do think that, when the sort of romance of that fades, we still want to have, a kind of consumer experience, that maximizes our enjoyment of these platforms. And if you're like me, we've all had that experience where we sit down and we either can't find something we want, and what's recommended to us, for example, is just not interesting or not even appropriate in many cases, or we simply can't even find something on the platform. It gets really frustrating pretty quickly, and I think we need to be thinking about that. And I think these content players really need to be thinking about how their customers are engaging with the platforms that they're consuming this content on.
Yeah, and to that point, we'll be hosting launching a survey and then a webinar readout on our, which has really now become a benchmark survey of streaming and OTT user experiences. So we're looking for some additional inputs from experts in the industry. Reach out to me if you're interested in getting on board. And again, just like last year, we'll do a readout. It'll be really interesting to see. Of course, we'll be adding some new questions, but to see how things have changed in terms of emphasis from last year and kind of looking. I think we had, a couple hundred survey respondents last year, did some nice kind of looking at the stats there. And we really saw some interesting trends emerge. So we'll be doing it again this year, and we'll compare to last year. So Thanks again for that. So we're almost out of time here, Stephen. One of the things we like to do in this podcast series is to sort of personalize some of the leaders in the industry. Get to, we've already learned a lot from you, but we want to learn a little bit about you, maybe an interest or a hobby you can share with our audience.
Oh boy. Well, I have an 8-year-old daughter, so I mean that consumes all of my non-streaming media time. I guess travel is a big one for me. I don't get to do it as much, but I know you were just in Italy. I was
Yes, it was wonderful. You gave me some good pointers too. Thank you for that.
Oh, such a pleasure. I mean, I was living vicariously, but I do have a trip. My wife turns 50 this year. Please God, I hope she's
You're not supposed to say that. 40,
Oh,
you mean?
sorry. Oh,
Yes.
my apologies. Right, exactly. You're right. We're going to do a trip to Mallorca and take my daughter in September, which we're super excited about. I mean, travel is, we sort of, work to travel in a lot of ways. So we're looking forward to doing more of that now that everybody's, fully back and embracing.
Yeah. And it's so nice to bring your kids too, because I think it's so important for them to get a worldview and see other cultures and languages and food. Oh my goodness. I probably gained 5 pounds in Italy with how amazing the food was. And that's a big part of it too. They kind of expand the horizons a little bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny, right in as COVID was sort of tailing off right before Omicron, we were very itchy to travel, and my wife, booked a trip to London right before the holidays. This would be 2021. And, we took my daughter, and, it's amazing how much they kind of adapt to that when you, expose them to it. I will say my daughter's the pickiest eater ever. So, we're a little challenged by that. We've been putting off a trip to Japan because we're just not sure what she would eat if we took her. But we're looking forward to that. I think Robosoft is owned by a large publicly traded.
Oh, true, right?
Company,
Technopro. Yep.
Technopro Holdings. So I'm very anxious to get over there at some point. My wife is dying to go back. She loves it there. So if we can get an opportunity to do that, we'll take my daughter as well.
That's it. I was in Tokyo some years ago. It's a beautiful city, wonderful people too. So that's a fun trip to plan. So, well, listen, thank you so much. One, for sharing your insights. Two, for being a great support for all the work that I do. It benefits our OTT executive community. So thank you for that. This concludes our podcast. Thanks, Stephen, so much for your input and for your time.
Well, it's such a pleasure, Brian. Honestly, always, always learn from you, always learn from the community. And look, we're trying to get better too. Like at the end of the day, we're a service business for our customers, for our clients. And we want to make sure that we're bringing to them, the best value we can. So this is enormously helpful in that regard. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Great. Well, great getting to know you a little bit more in Robosoft Technologies. Once again, this is Brian Mahoney, the CEO of Trend Research and the president of the OTT executive community. This is Stephen Lathroum signing off. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.